Guys and girls, Boardnell back with you on this video. I'm going to be talking about Better Call Saul Season 6, Episode 4. The episode is called Hit and Run. It's full spoilers from the start of this review as always. And after the high drama of last week's episode, this one is a very tight episode. Everything seems to have a purpose. It's a really big episode when it comes to Jimmy Saul being drawn ever nearer to what we see him in Breaking Bad. It's also a massive episode for Kim, and the scene in the middle or quite near the end of the episode, actually, the big meeting scene between her and a certain other regular cast member is a massive episode. It's a great scene of TV, which I'll talk more about a bit later on, but it's a really consistent episode with lots of great writing and some of just the callbacks and consistency and the way everything seems to tie together so neatly, so smoothly, but obviously with compelling characters and direction and all the rest of it. Really shows you what makes this show one of the great shows around today. I do actually have one complaint, or at least one question mark, which is over a certain bit of editing, so I'll get to that in a minute. But first of all, just to talk a bit about the opening scene, because the opening scene is we get this couple who are merrily riding on their bikes down the street, and we get almost like a 60s style bop type bit of music which suggests something very merry. And obviously I didn't know who this couple was. We get a funny little line, because at one point they stop at their house and it's they're questioning the colour red or the style of red it's been painted, and I think one of them's how would you describe that? Would you describe it as fire engine red? And she's like, no, that's more like tomato red, which is a really funny line. And they go inside, and it turns out they're this sort of really rich sort of couple, and they've got a sort of a servant type thing, and there's just different things going around the house, and they're sort of quite wacky because the husband's doing this eccentric sort of exercise when he's inside. But it's revealed at the end of the scene then someone, the camera sort of spirals down into the house, into a basement type area, and it turns out someone is watching multiple TV screens, and that's when we cut to the credits. And this episode and obviously the show in general is so good at just planting seeds and making you question, and it does this sort of opening a lot where it feels really out of the blue, and who are these people, who's this guy watching the screens, and just the whole style of the scene. So it's very good, the show of setting these things up at the start of the episode, but then obviously giving you a clear answer to what it is at the end. And I think it's all very well thought out, because I think because of the nature of this episode, with Kim being very sort of paranoid about someone following her throughout the episode, then having this sort of opening and someone watching people on these screens almost creates this idea that then it could be someone watching Kim, maybe, but which obviously isn't too far from the truth when you find out who is actually following her. But anyway, it turns out this is a Gus project, and we find out really at the end or near the end of the episode, then he's been using this house as a base, and so the downstairs bit is where the screens is, and it's Gus's house, and we see him come home, and I'll talk more about the scene with him and Mike later. But this episode actually does a good job once again of just showing you the level of details that goes into Gus and his whole operation. So, I mean, at one point it's revealed then he even gets Mike to like vet like his chicken cookers. Basically, that's the level of detail he goes to run like an airtight operation. Mike also, checks into this guy who's been following him and finds out he's like, I think he was like a butcher or something. Oh, plumber actually, and it's confirmed. Mike confirms that then he's actually, he is legit. So it's another nice little insight to the job that Mike does for Gus and just the level of details of the whole operation, which I really like. So switching to the Saul and Kim stuff, because that takes up the majority of the episode. I'll actually circle back round to Saul and some of his stuff on its own at the end, but we start off with a really interesting scene where it's like the next phase of like the Howard operation, and once again it's a lot of fun just seeing this unravel and develop and exactly what they're gonna do. Now it's this part of the episode, the early part, which actually I do have a slight problem, or as I said, question mark, and that's because we see Howard go to like the therapist, and he we sort of hear he's having problems at home, problems with his marriage. And he starts talking about a dream he had. And we cut then to Saul, who, for the purposes of this whole plan, he looks a lot like Howard. He's like styled his hair as like Howard's. And this is sort of intercut with Howard starting to talk about the dream. And it's a little bit weird because the way it's cut is, it's almost cut like this is part of the dream. Like Howard, for some reason, is having this dream where Saul looks like him. Obviously, it's revealed it's not that, then it's really Saul, and it's part of this plan. So I don't know if that was like a on purpose or swerve on their part, but I just thought the edit was a little bit weird because you only really get a bit of like Howard's like talking about his dream, and I don't know if it's just because it wasn't really relevant and they wanted to cut quickly to the Saul Kim stuff, but I thought it was just a little bit of a strange sort of cut where I wasn't sure if they were like purposely throwing us off, where okay, could this be part of the dream, or if it's just it's obviously you find out pretty fast it is what it is. It's Saul styling his hair on Howard, and that's because they're once again framing Howard. So Kim sets up this meeting with Cliff, and once again there's good setup stuff for other stuff in the episode, because Kim, before Cliff arrives, is like really nervous, like she's shaking, and then she practices her posture, which could just be to prepare for part of the thing with Cliff, but she is quite nervous. That they actually show us that, which I think is definitely meant to be because she started to feel that someone is following her. But so she meets with Cliff and they start talking about her, off setting up like some sort of like charity or foundation where they would, for legal advice and help with people who are like really poor and need it, like immigrants or people on the street. And I think what's clever about this, and it's a good sort of character thing for Kim, is then she actually like comes back to it later in the episode where when she's talking to Saul about it, she sort of lights up when she says to him then Cliff was actually into the idea, and it was something they could maybe follow up on. So it actually shows that she was interested in this stuff. It wasn't just part of the scheme that involves them. But anyway, the scheme itself is the Saul, looking like Howard with the Howard hairdo, they've obviously paid this hooker, and they take Howard's car. Like Saul puts a cone down where it was, and obviously they've taken it from this therapist office, and the cone thing becomes important later. But so they drive off, and they drive when they get the text from Kim when things are ready to happen. They drive really fast past, where the restaurant is, and they're sitting outside, and Saul, like pretending to be Howard, kicks the hooker out of the car, and of course it's Howard's car, so Cliff is right there, and he sees then it looks like that's Howard's car, and I'm assuming he's done the whole hair thing in case it comes back, and like there's a description, like the hooker can describe him as like looking like Howard. So it's another really clever sort of trick, where obviously they potentially framed Howard and put him in like an awkward position, and I think it's just further planting the seed in Cliff's mind as well, because when the whole drug setup happened at the club a couple of episodes ago, he was quick to defend Howard and wasn't so convinced, and that's not the Howard I know, sort of thing. So this further is going to create doubt in his mind. So it's a really entertaining scheme, and the way, once again, it's very like rewarding watching it play out. But what's even best is like the cap off of it, because Saul obviously takes the car back to the therapist or to the therapist's place, and someone's moved the cone, and Saul going on a rant about the cone. Who moves a cone? Like, it is so funny. Like this just shows you why Bob Odenkirk is such a great and natural comedian, and where his like comedy background really fits and works so well for the role of Saul Goodman. But that's so funny, and even better is the sight of him having to move like the big sign that says patients only. Like he literally has to like drag it out of the ground and then move it, and it's one of those big heavy metal signs, and then just whack it down into the ground near Howard's car to sort of cover for that. So that's a really good bit of physical comedy from Odenkirk, so I really enjoyed that stuff. So that's like further phasing in the Howard, Operation Howard, I'll say. So I'll talk a bit about Kim in the episode, because she obviously, as I said, became paranoid. Someone was following her, and she starts talking to Jimmy about it, and there's an interesting like exchange there where I can't remember what he says exactly, but he uses like a metaphor where he's basically describing them as wicked, and I do like her reaction when she questions like, "Oh, you calling us wicked?" And it once again goes to this idea that Kim, wants to believe and is convinced that they're doing this all for the purpose of the good, like the good fight. And Jimmy quickly like covers and said, "Oh no, you're wicked hot," sort of thing, but we're not wicked, and that sort of thing. But this is another thing they do really well in the episode, just the paranoia of Kim, and the actress Rhea Shebun, it does a great job as always, and there's just like little touches. Like there's a good scene where she actually notices these guys in a car who she thinks has been following them, and she goes out, and this scene actually shows you how gutsy Kim is, because she takes down the registration number, the license plate, and she then actually confronts them and asks them, "Have you been following us?" And they don't confirm or deny it really. They just say, one of them says, "I apologise if we've caused you any disturbance," and they just drive off. And then we get to the big meeting scene of the episode, which is Kim and Mike. And it's all funny because I was thinking, wow, are we going to get some stuff with that side of the plot? But this is just a great merging of the two sides. And this, well, I'm going to get to the detail in a minute, because if you didn't know any better, or if you hadn't really thought, you might think this is the first time Kim and Mike had met or been in the same scene. Now, I'm convinced it is the first time they've been in a scene that we've seen on the show, but there's a lovely little detail about before Kim leaves the diner, she actually remembers. She's like, "Oh, I have met you before. It's, you worked at the parking lot at the courthouse, I should say." And he's like, deadpan Mike is like, "Yeah, I did. That was me." But it's just a nice little detail, and it shows good consistency in the writing. And even though we'd never seen them in a scene before, it actually makes sense. Then Kim would have come across him because he did have that job at the parking lot. So it sort of makes sense, and she would remember that. So that's good consistency, and it's another good satisfying thing when it comes to Mike in the show. The fact that he has that sort of style of arc where he came from a lonely sort of parking lot attendant, and then a bit like Saul, he goes on this wild journey and ends up in a completely different place. So in some ways even more dramatic. But no, I absolutely love this scene because Mike is there to talk about the whole Lero situation, and he wants her, because he mentions about Jimmy representing him and getting him off, and he mentions, and he wants their help with him, with Lero. And that's when Kim mentions about he's dead though, right? And I think this is partly maybe to confirm then Kim and Saul think he's dead as well, but obviously Mike has sort of hints. I think he just says, "Is he?" sort of thing. But no, it's just a really good scene because Mike knows that what's going on exactly. He says, "I know you think you've been followed, and I can tell you, I know you and your husband have been up to dodgy stuff, but I can tell you, I don't care. I'm not going to be bothered about that." So he confirms that it's his men who have been following him, following Kim, and he confirms that they're not going to give you any trouble. And that's sort of when he leaves, really, and she mentions the thing about the parking lot. But it's just this great scene of TV where these two characters who have never really had a conversation before, not a proper one, just come together, and it's a great way to plant this seed and to bring these two halves of the plot together. And it just sets up all these possibilities, because one of the things about this show is we know Jimmy's destination, his purpose and where he's going to go, which leads into Breaking Bad. We just weren't quite sure the steps that lead in there. Obviously, we're much clearer on those steps now, but with Kim, we really didn't know her fate. We worry a lot for her because she's not with Jimmy or with Saul in Breaking Bad. So, and the sort of path their characters are going down, and the sort of show this is, then you do maybe worry for her. But I think this meeting with Mike and some of the things it sets up, with maybe her potentially getting involved in the Lero plot, I think sets up a lot of like juicy things, so that could be quite exciting. So just to conclude on like the Gus stuff in the episode, because Mike meets with him later, and really most of it is that stuff about the surveillance and about, you know, people following like Gus and then like the Freiker. But also, like, the other little nugget is then Mike himself is starting to think then Lero might be dead. Then he's like, well, because Gus repeats saying he's alive and says, well, where is he? And because he has that line about, to be fair, everybody in the world thinks he's dead. And it's an interesting line, because in a way it might just be Mike basically saying that, I think he's just pointing out that when so many people think someone's dead, then they probably are. It's pretty good odds. But also, I don't know, this idea that maybe, you know, if most people think he's dead, then is there really much harm in us thinking it and just getting on with our lives, sort of thing. But no, I do love this from Gus, and he keeps how persistent he is that he's still alive, and it's sort of just perfect, and he only really thinks that because of the impression he got from the interaction with Hector. I think just him having that instinct based on that one interaction is so brilliant. Shows you how smart and clever Gus is. But another thing to talk about briefly is that whole Lero thing, because we haven't seen him in a couple of episodes now. We haven't seen him. I don't think we've seen him since the first episode. I don't think he even appeared in episode 2. So I guess it's been a few episodes now. And there's something really smart they're doing here, where they're keeping him off screen for a long time, and it's gonna mean that when he comes back, there's gonna be like a big impact from his character, and you would assume he's gonna just come back and he's gonna return, and he's gonna, you know, return and come back and immediately either be involved with Saul or get involved with Kim somehow. But on that side of the plot, that then he's going to be in El Camino, basically. So that's exciting stuff. This idea that they're keeping him off screen for quite a lot of the season, and then he's just going to make this dramatic impact and come back. It's almost like the Joker in Batman, sort of thing, like classic Joker, if you think of in The Dark Knight, where they might actually like keep him off screen quite a long time, and then he'll come back out of nowhere and surprise people. But yeah, the whole Lero thing is this great like bit of intrigue over where he is, when will he show up again, and what the hell will he do. I mean, you've got to think maybe it's going to be, I could see it being like in a couple of episodes time. I'm not sure they'll want to keep him off screen for too long, but I could certainly see it being another couple of episodes before he comes back. So yeah, lots of intrigue with that. And just to talk a bit about the Soul stuff, because he actually starts getting a lot of clients in this episode, and that's because of the whole Keitel case. You know, his reputation with criminals is starting to precede him, and I forgot actually that he's working out of that salon again, and you know, the manager of that is not best pleased, especially since they're you got all these criminals lining up to see Saul, and none of them are like getting any treatment done, sort of thing. It's actually funny, Saul trying to pimp out the services, saying, you know, you should, I highly recommend, once again, he's trying to be smooth and slick and says, "Don't worry, you will see money, I promise." But yeah, she kicks him out eventually. And then the final scene is when he's actually found some new premises for the business, and he meets Kim there. And first of all, it's notable that Kim is like shocked at him getting all this business, and she says, "Is it because of the Keitel case?" And he's like, yeah, it's partly that, but also and I can't remember what he said, but he's once again deflecting a bit, because he obviously knows deep down that it is because of that stuff. And it's just, again, consistent writing with Kim, where she is like clearly uncomfortable and a bit awkward about him having this attention, especially because of the sort of attention it is. And then it's come from this whole Keitel business. And I think also because she's had that meeting with Mike earlier in the episode, then this stuff is like on her mind. And they just do a great job in this final scene, where Kim comments about how this place is like down and dirty and smelly and grimy, but she's quite supportive about it, because she does say things like, yeah, but on the other hand, it's near the courthouse, it's near like the food takeaway, because it ends with them like going for a takeaway. So yeah, it's all good stuff. Once again, very tight episode, apart from that bit of editing, which I wasn't sure exactly what they were going for. I don't know if they were maybe, once again, like fooling you, maybe tricking you into thinking this is part of Howard's dream, or what. It just seemed a bit out of place, the editing, like just how quickly they went into the sort of scene, because you sort of got a bit of Howard talking about the dream as well. But that aside, excellent episode once again, and this season is really on point and building up to another great finale, and the big finale of the show overall. So that's Better Call Saul. Once again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe. Share me out on social media. And just for another big Netflix show I'm doing at the moment, and that is Ozark. So I'm doing the final episodes of that, part 2 of season 4, the final season, up now on Netflix, and I've been making my way through them, done about one a day on average. So if you're a fan of that show, because I've done the whole show as well, all those reviews are up on the channel, then do check that out as well. But more Better Call Saul soon. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.